People think of like a beef stroganoff, mushroom stroganoff might be off-putting. I went into it hoping it was delicious, and it was even better than I anticipated. Highly recommend this recipe. How to make creamy mushroom stroganoff. To start off, I'm gonna dice up 1 large yellow onion. The original recipe calls for us to dice up 2 large shallots, but I didn't have shallots, so yellow onion worked perfectly. Now, you're going to want to get out a large saute pan or a large skillet, and you're going to want to melt 3 tablespoons of butter. I forgot to melt my butter first. You're going to see that that creates a little bit of a hiccup, but all turns out well in the end. So dice up your onion or your shallots, whatever you end up using, and get those into your skillet. Then the recipe calls for 1.5 pounds of cremini mushrooms. I didn't have cremini mushrooms, I just had the most economical white button mushrooms. So you're going to want to dice those up. Again, make sure you have a large enough pan. I had to switch it over, as we can see. I used white button mushrooms. You're going to want to dice them up. I leave them relatively big so that you get nice, hearty, meaty texture. So in total, this will be 24 ounces of mushrooms, whatever kind you end up using. So once you get your onion and your mushrooms and your butter into your pan, we are going to get our pan over medium-high heat. We're going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper to give our mushrooms some flavor. We're going to cook our mushrooms down until they're tender and brown. Don't worry, they'll shrink down. At the same time, you're going to want to boil a big pan of water, and once your water is boiling, give it some salt so we give our pasta some flavor. I'm using whole wheat bow tie today. The original recipe calls for medium shells. So we want 8 ounces of pasta cooking. You're going to cook it according to the directions on the package. In the meantime, make sure you keep stirring your mushrooms and your onions and get those nice and tender and brown. This might take a little while, but they'll get there. Don't forget to give your pasta a stir every now and again. We can see our mushrooms are slowly cooking down. They're going to create a lot of moisture, but don't give up on them. They'll cook up. I like to test my pasta when it's a minute or 2 away from being done according to the package. Mine still needed another minute. We're cooking our mushrooms and onions at medium-high heat. If medium-high seems a little too crazy to you, it's okay. You can cook them at medium heat. Once your pasta is cooked to al dente, go ahead and drain the pasta. I did leave a little bit of pasta water in the pan with my pasta. I used a fork just to stab one of my thicker pieces of mushroom to test to see if it was fork tender. Once the mushrooms are fork tender, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, or if you're using fresh, 4 teaspoons of fresh thyme. We're going to add 3 cloves of garlic minced. We're going to stir that into our mushrooms, and you're going to stir it for about a minute until it becomes fragrant and your kitchen smells like garlic. Once it has, we're going to add in 2.5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And you're going to want to stir this in and keep stirring for about a minute. We want to make sure the flour doesn't burn and that it gets all mixed in within our mushrooms. And the flour is going to help create a nice thick sauce for our mushroom stroganoff. Once our flour is all mixed in, we're going to slowly pour in 2 cups of beef broth. You can use canned, boxed, you can create your own with bouillon cubes, or I used Better Than Bouillon. It's like the paste you can buy. and I mixed in with some hot water to create my 2 cups of beef broth. So you're gonna stir that all in. Then we're going to add some Dijon mustard. We need 1.5 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, approximately. Now we're gonna stir that all in, and we're going to bring our mushroom mixture to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to reduce our heat so that our mushroom mixture is simmering. As it simmers, it's gonna thicken a little bit, and so we're gonna let it simmer for about 4 or 5 minutes. Now, our recipe has us stirring our pasta right in with our mushrooms once our sauce has thickened. I don't like this because I tend to have leftovers and I feel like the pasta gets soggy when it's mixed in. So I kept my sauce separate from my pasta. But once our sauce has thickened, we're going to add in some sour cream. So we need to add in 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. This is going to give us an even creamier texture in our stroganoff. Get that all stirred in. Once we have our sour cream all mixed in, we're just gonna let that go for a minute or 2 until our mushroom and sauce are heated through. Then we're gonna add the parmesan. So if you can, use fresh grated parmesan. We need 2/3 of a cup of parmesan. Get that all stirred in, and it'll melt down really easily, so it'll only take a minute. And then optional is a little bit of parsley. So if you want, add 2 tablespoons of freshly chopped parsley. I opted out of that, but it would give you a nice little pop of a green color. Now, I saved that little bit of pasta water. I'm just gonna add that into my sauce. A little bit of pasta water just helps bring a sauce together. Actually, I don't really have a scientific idea. I just know that a little bit of pasta water usually goes into a pasta sauce, so that's why I kept it. Now, before you serve it, make sure you give your sauce a taste test. Make sure there's enough salt and enough pepper. Mine was good to go. So now I'm gonna serve mine in a bowl, get some pasta, and ladle out some of that delicious, creamy, warm mushroom stroganoff. And of course a little bit of extra sauce just to make sure all of my pasta gets some sauce. And then most people think of like a beef stroganoff, so a simple mushroom stroganoff might be off-putting, but I highly recommend this recipe. I went into it hoping it was delicious, and it was even better than I anticipated. I'll leave the recipe down below, how I made it and the original recipe. If you know of someone who might like this recipe, go ahead and share it with them. And then go ahead and click on one of these videos that are left up on the screen, and I will see you guys there. Thanks for watching.